Hello, everyone. Welcome inside the CBC Newsroom. I'm Natasha Fatah, and we begin once again in Alliston, Ontario. Automaker Honda, along with the Prime Minister and Ontario's Premier, have just announced a $15 billion investment. It's being touted as Honda's largest investment ever in North America. The company says it will build an electric vehicle battery plant next to its existing Alliston operation.
To further accelerate our electrification efforts in Canada, Honda will take another major step forward. I am pleased to announce that Honda intends to establish a vertically integrated and comprehensive EV value chain in Canada. This includes all aspects of EV production, from procurement of raw materials, mainly for batteries, to the production of finished EVs.
We have extensive coverage for you now because Megan Fitzpatrick is in Alliston, Ontario. She was on hand as that $15 billion plan was being unveiled. We'll also check in Ottawa, where Janice McGregor has more on the political aspects of a project with major federal and provincial involvement. So let's begin with Megan, who was there. Megan, what can you tell us about the specifics of this landmark deal?
Well, as you heard in that clip there, it is a $15 billion investment by Honda, and it involves the creation of 4 new facilities that will be built. 2 of them here in Alliston, sort of adjacent to their existing facilities here, and then 2 others. We don't know the locations of those yet, but they will be somewhere in Ontario, and we're expecting those details to be announced in the coming weeks and months. So altogether, what they're building is an EV assembly plant, an EV battery manufacturing plant, and then the 2 other facilities involve, this gets kind of technical, a cathode active material and precursor processing plant, as well as a separator plant. And those 2 facilities will be in partnership with 2 other companies. They are Korean companies. Now, they're expecting these new facilities to be up and running around 2028. So still a few years away before they're producing these EV vehicles here. But they are expecting, once they're running, to be making upwards of 200,000 vehicles a year. And one of their key details here are the number of jobs that they say this announcement will create, in the neighborhood of 1,000 direct jobs here in the Alliston area. But then they also were talking about the number of spin-off jobs that will be created, even just the construction jobs alone to build these new facilities. Now, in terms of taxpayer support and contributions to this major investment being made by Honda, Premier Doug Ford outlining that his government is prepared to provide what they call direct and indirect incentives. Now, we didn't get many details on exactly what that entails, but those incentives are worth about $2.5 billion, the Premier said. Here's a little bit more of what he said at the announcement.
This is historic. It's the largest auto investment in Canadian history. It's a tremendous win for Ontario, for our workers, for all of Canada. Honda's new facilities will strengthen our electric vehicle supply chain, securing and creating thousands of new paying jobs across our province.
And on the federal side, an investment in the area of $2.5 billion as well, but that is coming in the form of tax credits. So what we heard from the number of federal ministers who were here, including Philippe Francois Champagne, the industry minister, Chrystia Freeland, the deputy prime minister, talking about the new electric vehicle supply chain investment tax credit that was part of the most recent budget. Honda will be making use of that tax credit, we heard, as well as the existing clean technology manufacturing tax credit. So the officials here very pleased to announce this deal. They said it was 2 years in the making, a lot of negotiations. We heard some of those talks, Natasha, involved Premier Doug Ford having Honda executives over to his home here in Toronto. A lot of face-to-face meetings here in Ontario, but also in Japan as well, we heard, over the last 2 years to secure this major investment.
We're talking about this major investment. I've been teasing all day, Megan, about how happy everyone is at that press conference. But for the people in Alliston, Ontario, and for their economy, just explain to us how significant this deal is for them.
Yeah, I think the mayor of Alliston was maybe one of the happiest people here because of what this means for his community. Now, Honda has a long history already in this community. They first opened their first plant here in the 1980s. We heard at the news conference with 350 people. Since then, they've grown a lot and opened 2 more facilities, another plant as well as a facility that produces engines, and they employ more than 4,000 people now. And we heard from the mayor what a major pillar, he said, Honda has been in this community. Here's a little bit more of what he said at the news conference.
Well, I think you've heard it's probably the biggest deal that's ever been made in Canada. So to trickle down to where we are absolutely thrilled. We are so impressed. We're so grateful to the federal government, the province, Honda of Canada, the investments they're making in the town of New Tecumseh and the Alliston area. It's astronomical. They are securing jobs for a minimum of the next 4 generations of New Tecumseh residents that want to live and work here. It's phenomenal.
And he did acknowledge, though, there might be some challenges with this growth. For example, for new employees that come to work here with those new jobs, where are they going to live? He says they do have housing projects planned under construction to grow the housing supply in this community. So he said there will be challenges, Natasha, but he's confident they can overcome them. And again, with those incentives from the province, that could include funding for infrastructure projects like new roads, sewer systems, water, that kind of thing, to support both the housing projects as well as the new facilities that'll be built here in Alliston.
Okay, thanks so much, Megan. I want to turn now to CBC's Janice McGregor, who's joining us once again from Ottawa. Janice, as you've outlined for us before, behind the scenes, there was so much work that had to be coordinated between the federal and provincial governments, and of course with Honda itself. Let's talk everyone through what needed to happen in order to get to this deal.
Right, because the federal government has made a change in tactics here. When it was bidding for the first 2 battery plants that it brought to Ontario, it was trying to keep up with, match, the production subsidies available to Volkswagen or Stellantis if it had located those same facilities in the U.S. Production subsidies pay out over time. The more the plant produces, the more taxpayers kick in. It's kind of on a per unit basis. And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had warned that that gets really expensive. It's very difficult for Canada to keep up with the federal treasury in the U.S. and that they might not be able to keep doing that as much as they really wanted to land the EV business of at least one, if not more, Japanese automakers, in part for geopolitical reasons. Japan and Canada have a common goal. They both want to move away from their dependency economically on China for a lot of strategic reasons, including political and security ones. And Canada has the critical minerals to make this happen, but they have to get the investments flowing to pull this off. Today, with this Honda deal, they have, but they are not getting production subsidies like the other 2 plants are. Honda is getting tax credits that have rolled out over the last 2 federal budgets and also the 2023 Ontario budget, offering up a 30% share of what they are purchasing in new equipment and technology that is green and clean, including at the mineral extraction level, but also a 10% credit for the cost of new buildings. And you can see in these pictures the size of these sites. These are going to be massive buildings. And that tax credit specifically designed, you might say, for a very vertically integrated business like Honda's, where they're building an assembly plant and a battery plant and investing with partners in sort of the components of a battery. Because they were able to check all those 3 boxes, they qualified for yet even more money. But important to understand that money kind of is loaded out into the future. First, they're going to construct these sites. Taxpayers aren't showing up with a $5 billion novelty check here today. This is going to be rolling out through kind of to 2034 in some of the government documents we've seen. So this could be something that is committing future governments to keep on sort of backstopping it. Important to understand another aspect of the politics here too. The Ford government had some sharp things to say about Chrystia Freeland's last budget, not necessarily happy ones, didn't think it got what it wanted. But today, all smiles between the two levels of government. And what they have in common, I think, is a common type of voter that they're really pitching this as a success for. And that would be the working class. That is the voter everybody's going to be going after in the next federal election, for example. So listen to how Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was positioning this, not as something that was a success only because of the vast resources underground in Canada's north, but also because of its people.
Canada has great natural resources. We have clean energy. We take climate action seriously. We have great access to markets through our more free trade deals than any of our partner countries. We have stable democratic institutions and strong, vibrant communities. Those are all part of the advantages of Canada. But the central part of my pitch, the biggest advantage that Canada has in drawing investments from all around the world, are Canadian workers who are the best in the world. Thank you for making our job of bringing in investment so much easier.
And he wasn't the only politician to have real kind words for Canadian workers in all of this. Look, as the day goes on, we are going to see federal ministers fanning out across the country. There is a fear, I think, here politically that this would be seen as something they're doing just to boost Ontario. In fact, federal ministers are going to be out talking about how these tax credits could help other parts of the country too, as they build what François-Philippe Champagne has called an ecosystem in Canada, where these critical minerals are available to the world and they're open for business for other investments as well. Melanie Joly especially going to be talking in Saskatchewan later today, and I expect she will be positioning this as very much in Canada's national interest for reasons that go beyond the economy.
Janice, what are we hearing from the federal Conservatives about the deal?
Well, this is the other interesting part of the political story, because we have a statement out from Conservative critics today. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just to quote part of it. They talk about how the Conservatives have seen before where Justin Trudeau announces massive subsidies that are supposed to create jobs. And then they mentioned something that's been a bit of an issue in Windsor about how there were a few dozen jobs on a job site that employs thousands of Canadians that actually went to some foreign workers who were bought in to install special equipment there. And Conservatives saying they can't trust this latest announcement of $5 billion for another multinational corporation will be any different. Some real skepticism there, as we've seen from the Conservatives all along when it comes to this industrial policy. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau swung back very, very hard against this notion, said that ultimately voters are going to have to decide, but that he thinks what they're saying is wrong. He doesn't think that a government just sits back and prioritizes balancing the budget over all else, that it needs to have a vision for where it wants its economy to go, explaining why they're betting big on this. And then he said it was his pleasure to be there with a progressive Conservative like Ontario Premier Doug Ford, and handed the mic over to Doug Ford to also make the case for this deal. Take a listen.
The last 5.5 years, we went from the previous government, provincial previous government, chasing jobs out of this province to a tune of 300,000 to over 700,000 people bringing home better and bigger paychecks because of the policies, because of the partnerships that we've had at all three levels of government, municipal, provincial, and federal partners, investing in the future. This is generational. This is decades and decades down the road.
Decades and decades down the road. So we will see, but it is very interesting to see this space between the provincial Conservatives in Queen's Park and the federal Conservatives in Ottawa, who, of course, opinion polls tell us are well poised for the next election. The fight to convince people on this one is very much on.
CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.